my dear students, how are you? I hope all are good. Today let me start SST chapter number 3, the Sultans of Delhi. The Sultan of Delhi who ruled between 1206 to 1526 left an indelible mark on Indian history. For more than 300 years, 5 dynasties ruled the country. These dynasties were the slave king, the Khaljis, the Tughlaq, the Sayyids and the Lodi. Delhi, a seat of power. सबसे ज़्यादा टारगेट दिल्ली को बनाया जाता था. दिल्ली क्योंकि कैपिटल बन चुकी है जो है भारत की, तो दिल्ली एक क्या कहते हैं ना, एक बहुत सेंसिटिव एरिया था, तो सब उसी पे आके कब्जा करते थे. दिल्ली सर्व सेवरल एम्पायर्स एज अ कैपिटल. द तोमर्स विद द सिटी ऑफ दिल्ली का दिल्ली, तो जो ये इसका नाम दिल्ली का था, उसको तोमर जो आए थे जब उनका राज हुआ था, उन्होंने इसको दिल्ली बना दिया इन 736. Later the Chauhans, after defeating the Tomars, founded their rule in Delhi, but this time Delhi had become an important commercial center. Coins, Delhi walls started to be minted. Many Jain merchants settled in Delhi with the establishment of Sultanate rule. Delhi became a seat of power. Delhi now transformed into a capital which controlled vast areas of the subcontinent. In 1206, Delhi became the capital of the Delhi Sultanate. Many dynasties expanded and built forts and townships in and around the city of Delhi. The Mamluk or slave dynasty. Muhammad Ghori was assassinated in 1206 and his newly conquered dominance suffered due to his sudden death. After his death, Muhammad Ghori's Indian possessions came under the rule of his general Qutbuddin Aibak, with the whose reign began the slave dynasty. Qutbuddin Aibak. Qutbuddin Aibak ruled India only for 4 years. He had been sold as a slave in his childhood, and after passing through a few hands, was finally bought by Sultan Muhammad Ghori. Muhammad Ghori soon recognized his efficiency and gave him an important post. So, Qutbuddin Aibak is known as the founder of the slave dynasty or Mamluk dynasty. So, Mamluk means a slave who was born of free parents. ठीक है? So, they were called slave rulers because the 3 sultans, Qutbuddin, Iltutmish and Balban, were themselves once slaves. After Ghori's death, Aibak set up a free kingdom with its headquarters in Lahore. So he thus laid the foundation of the Delhi Sultanate. Aibak was the first free sultanate ruler in India. He was very kind. His habit of distributing large sums of money in charity gained him the title of Lakh Baksh, the giver of lakhs. He built 2 great mosques, one at Delhi called the Quwaitul Islam, Power of Islam, and another at Ajmer called Adhai Din Ka Jhopda. So he made no fresh victories because he was busy with consolidating his rule in the conquered territories. He did not even try to establish a healthy system of administration. He followed a military rule. He also started the construction of the famous Qutub Minar at Delhi, but most of the work was finished by Iltutmish. Rajput dynasty. After the death of Harsh, northern India broke up. The heading is the ruling dynasties of Delhi. So number 1 is Rajput dynasty. After the death of Harsh, northern India broke up into small regional kingdom. क्योंकि हर्ष ने क्या किया था ना, हर्षवर्धन ने सबको यूनिटी में एक साथ जोड़ा हुआ था. उसके मरने के साथ बट गए, अलग अलग हो गए. In the period of 647 to 1192, add a number of kingdoms came into existence and were ruled by the Rajputs. Tomar are written 12th century, Anangpal 1130 to 1145, Chauhan 1165 to 92, and Prithviraj Chauhan 75 to 92. Early Turkish. अब देखिए यहाँ पे इनका सबका ना समय दिया हुआ है. तुर्किश जो है स्लेव सुल्तान कुतुबुद्दीन ऐबक 1206 से लेके 1210, शमसुद्दीन 1210 से 1236, Razia 36 to 40, Ghiazuddin Balban 66 to 87, and Khalji dynasty, Khalji 90 to 96, Alauddin Khalji 96 to 16, and Mubarak Khalji 1316 to 3020. Tughlaq dynasty, Ghiazuddin Tughlaq 3020 to 24, Muhammad Tughlaq 24 to 51, Firoz Shah 51 to 88, and later Tughlaq so 88 to 1414. Up Sayyid dynasty, Khizr Khan, Mubarak Shah, Muhammad Shah, and Alam Shah. So Khizr Khan 1414 to 1421, Mubarak Shah 1420 to 34, Muhammad Shah 34 to 43, and Alam Shah 43 to 51. Lodi dynasty, Bahlul Lodi 1451 to 89, Sikandar Lodi 89 to 17, Ibrahim Lodi 17 to 26. One day in 1210, while playing polo, Qutbuddin fell off his horse and died. Iltutmish, Qutbuddin was succeeded by Iltutmish. So Shamsuddin Iltutmish was born of Turkish parents who belonged to the Iberi tribe of Central Asia. After the death of Qutbuddin, the nobles of Delhi invited Iltutmish, so the governor of Badaयूं, to come to Delhi. Okay, so Iltutmish reached Delhi and assumed sovereign powers. So he made Delhi as his capital. So he devoted the first 10 years of his rule in consolidating his seat of power. He had to face serious troubles from his rival Turkish nobles who had been very influential in political and military affairs. Iltutmish and the Mongols. During Iltutmish's reign, the Mongols appeared on the borders of India for the first time. So these fierce and warlike people under the leadership of Genghis Khan over in northwestern territories and reached the banks of the Indus. Some enemies of the Mongols sought shelter with Iltutmish, but he refused. He thus saved his kingdom from the Mongols' fury and imminent devastation. The conquest of northern India. During the period 1297 to 1305, Alauddin conquered the following states in northern India. Okay, Gujarat. Alauddin's general Nusrat Khan invaded Gujarat and looted the prosperous port of Cambay. So there he purchased a Hindu slave named Malik Kafur for 1000 dinars. 1000 dinar में क्या उसको खरीद लिया था. Malik Kafur embraced Islam and later extended the Khalji Empire to the whole of South India. Ranthambore. In 1301, Alauddin generals Ulugh Khan and Nusrat Khan led a siege to the fort. Nusrat Khan, along with many Muslim soldiers, was killed in the battle. Ultimately, Alauddin himself took over the command of the army and attacked Ranthambore. So the Rajput chief put up a strong resistance but was finally defeated and put to death. चित्तौड़. अब उसने चित्तौड़ को कैसे जीता, कब्जा किया उस पे. Alauddin Khalji started from Mewar in 1303. Rana Ratan Singh and his soldiers fought to the last man in 1305. So Alauddin conquered Malwa, the cities of Ujjain, Mandu and Chanderi. Thus, by 1305, Alauddin had become the master of the whole of northern India. The conquest of Deccan, Devgiri. In 1307, Alauddin Khalji sent an army under Malik Kafur against King Ramchand of Devgiri. So the king was defeated, but Alauddin allowed him to rule as a vassal. So Devgiri now became the base for Alauddin's further campaigns in the south. Conquest of Warangal. Its ruler Prataprudra Deva offered tough resistance but was defeated. He agreed to pay an annual tribute to the Khalji ruler. So Malik Kafur returned to Delhi with an immense booty. Conquest of Dwar Samudra. Raja Virabalal III submitted without resistance. Malik Kafur looted and plundered some of the famous temples and returned to Delhi with a large quantity of gold, silver or jewels, etc. Malabar. Malik Kafur marched to the Malabar coast, which was ruled by the Pandyas. So after looting much wealth, he returned to Madurai. बहुत लूटा इन्होंने हमारे देश को, मदुरई. The Pandya king Veera Pandya was defeated. Malik Kafur with a large booty of horses and elephants went to Rameshwaram. He built many mosques there and returned to Delhi. Second camping to Devgiri. Raja Shankar Deva, the son of Ramchandra, had stopped paying the promised tax to Alauddin Khalji. So Malik Kafur again invaded Devgiri and killed Shankar Deva. Okay, this was the last Deccan camping of Malik Kafur. So he had brought the whole of South India under the rule of Alauddin Khalji. Alauddin and the Mongols. Alauddin took many steps to stop the invasion of the Mongols. He strengthened his army and made it more efficient. He got forts repaired, which lay on the route of the Mongols. So he also got new castles built at important places. So he placed his armies in the frontier provinces of Multan, Saman and Dipalpur to check the advancement of the Mongols. So the Mongols were so well checked by Alauddin's counter steps that they did not dare invade India as long as he was alive. Alauddin Khalji's administration. Administrative reforms. Alauddin was a strong administrator in order to control internal revolts and to keep the nobles under his strict control. He introduced several measures. He prohibited the nobles from doing intermarriages so as to prevent them from making alliances against him. He prohibited them from holding social gatherings or drinking at parties. He knew that such parties gave the nobles opportunities to hatch conspiracies. He set up an efficient detective system. Spies called Khufiya Navis listened to bazaar gossip and reported it to the king. This enabled Alauddin to watch the activities of the nobles. He extracted surplus money from the nobles by imposing heavy taxes on them. So he kept a strong and well-equipped army to check external invasions and internal revolts. Economic reforms. Alauddin was the first Sultan of Delhi who took keen interest in the fiscal and economic reforms. He needed money to maintain a large army to fight against the Mongols and for the suppression of internal revolts. So, he introduced the following economic and financial reforms to increase his income. Regulation of prices. He issued regulations to control the prices of all types of daily use such as wheat, barley, rice, clothes, sugar, ghee, etc. So he introduced standard weights and measures all over the country. He traders who used false weight and measures to cheat people were severely punished. है ना, वजन में कम तोलते थे, वेट कम रखते थे उसका एक तरफ से, तो क्या हुआ, उनको पनिशमेंट दिया जाता था. कंट्रोल ओवर सप्लाईज. All the local producers within 100 miles of Delhi were asked to keep only 10 mounds of grain with them and sell the surplus to the government. So the large granaries were built to store grains. So the food grains were supplied to the people at very low rates in time of hardship. Nobody dared to sell the goods at the rate higher than the fixed by the administration. Control over markets. Alauddin deputed high official called Shahnai Mandi, superintendents of the market, to control the market's prices and enforce market regulations. Rationing system in times of scarcity. Alauddin introduced the system of rationing whenever drought or famine is occurred in any area of his reign. Revenue reforms. Alauddin made every effective reforms in the land revenue system. The land under cultivation was measured and land revenue was fixed on the basis of fertility of the land. So land tax was collected in both cash as well as kind. He also took steps to end corruption in the collection of land tax. Besides land revenue, grazing tax was introduced where people reared cattle to support their income. End of the Khalji dynasty. Alauddin died in 1316 and none of His heirs was powerful enough to control such a vast empire. Finally, in 1320, a group of nobles led by Ghazi Malay, the governor of Punjab, invaded Delhi and captured the throne. He held the title of Ghiasuddin Tughlaq and founded the Tughlaq dynasty. The Tughlaq dynasty. The founder of the Tughlaq dynasty was Ghiasuddin Tughlaq, who sat on the throne of Delhi in 1320. He built a new city of Tughlaqabad near Delhi. He strengthened the defense of the northwestern frontier against Mongol invaders. So, Ghiasuddin suppressed the rebels of Hindu chiefs of Deccan and Maharashtra. He invaded Bengal and occupied a large part of it. So, he met with his death either by conspiracy or by an accident. In 1325 AD, Juna Khan sat on the throne with the title of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. So, the famous rulers of this dynasty were Ghiasuddin Muhammad bin Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was one of the most efficient rulers of his time, but he was hasty and impatient. Therefore, many of his experiments failed. He has been named an ill-started idealist by historians. So, the most controversial step he undertook was the transfer of the capital from Delhi to Devagiri. है ना, सबसे बेकार कदम उसने उठाया था कि दिल्ली को राजधानी को दिल्ली से देवगिरी ट्रांसफर कर दो. It appears that the Sultan wanted to make Devgiri a second capital because he felt he would be able to keep an eye over South India better from there. Devgiri, जो दौलताबाद है, was more than 1500 kilometers away from Delhi. Only half of the people who started the journey could reach Daulatabad safely. After some years, he decided to leave Daulatabad mainly because he noticed that just he could not check the south from Delhi, so also he could not control North India from Daulatabad. Another bold step which turned out to be a great failure was the introduction of token currency. He decided to introduce a bronze coin due to scarcity of silver, so which was to have the same values as the silver taka. Thus people amassed gold and silver coins and used only bronze or copper coins for trade. Hence, traders and common men did not accept it. People began foreigning the new coins, which thus became greatly evaluated in the market. Finally, the Sultan had to withdraw the token currency. Barni mentions that heaps of new coins remain lying outside the Tughlaqabad fort. Likewise, his attacks on Khursan and Karachi were used failure. Shah Tughlaq keen interest in the economic progress of the country. He repaired and dug a number of canals and built several new towns. Timur's invasion of India. Timur यानी कि Tamil attacked India in 1398. When the Delhi Sultanate was on the verge of collapse, he crossed the plains of Punjab without any protest. Okay, so the people ran for their lives, leaving their homes to be looted by the invaders. When the invaders reached the gates of Delhi, the Delhi Sultan Muhammad and his minister Malik Iqbal Khan offered a weak resistance. In the battle fought in 1398, Timur got a victory after staying in Delhi for 15 days and amassing immense wealth. He moved back via Meerut, Haridwar, Kangra and Jammu, sacking and plundering towns. The Sayyid dynasty. Before leaving India, Timur had appointed Khizr Khan as the governor of Punjab. In 1414, Khizr Khan marched to Delhi and sat on the throne. He founded the new dynasty known as the Sayyid Sultans of Delhi. So there were 4 rulers in all: Khizr Khan, Mubarak Shah, Muhammad Shah and Alam Shah. During the period of the Sayyids, Punjab was a distributed area and there were frequent revolts at various places. The Lodi dynasty. By Lodi, the last ruler of the Sayyid dynasty, Alam Shah, was overthrown by Bahlol Lodi, the governor of Lahore and Sirhind. He occupied Delhi and founded the new dynasty named as Lodi dynasty. Sikandar Lodi. Sikandar Lodi was the most capable ruler of the Lodi dynasty, he tried to consolidate his power by bringing the provincial governors and chiefs under his control. So he suppressed the prevailing disorder and like Balban attempt to restore the dignity of the court. So the roads became safe for journey and trade again flourished. Abdullah, the author of Tariq Daudi, speaks highly of him, but in 1570 Sikandar fell ill and died. Sikandar Lodi was succeeded by Ibrahim Lodi, an arrogant ruler. So he irritated the Afghan nobles by his harsh treatment and made them enemy. Daulat Khan Lodi, the governor of Punjab, turned against him and declared himself practically independent. He invited Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur, the king of Afghanistan, to invade India and overthrow Ibrahim Lodi. Babur attacked 5 times on India during 1519 to 26. During the 5th and final invasion, Babur defeated Daulat Khan Lodi. As Daulat Khan released the Babur wished to conquer India for himself. So he turned against him. This compelled Babur to retire to Kabul. In November 1525, he moved from Kabul again with a big army and captured Punjab. Babur now moved towards Delhi and reached Panipat. Ibrahim Lodi also marched to take on the Mughal invader on the battlefield of Panipat. Although Babur's army was much smaller in number, it had fine artillery. Ibrahim Lodi died on the battlefield along with 15 to 16,000 soldiers. Okay, so Babur won a decisive victory. The Battle of Panipat decided not the fate of Punjab but also that of India. So the Sultanate rule came to an end and Babur laid the foundations of the Mughal Empire in India. Life and cultural under the Delhi Sultanate. The rule of the Sultanate of Delhi, extending over a period of 5 centuries, had a great impact on the social, economic, religious and cultural lives of the people of India. So this period of Indian history had many features which were quite different from those of ancient India. Social life. Indian society during the medieval period was mainly distributed into 4 major classes or groups: the aristocracy, the priests, the town people and the village people of peasants. The upper class for aristocracy comprised the ruling class, included the sultan, the nobles, the landlords and Hindu kings or princes. The second class included the priests or the ulemas, the Maulvis, Qazis, the Brahmins or the Pandit. They advised the rulers on the matters of administration in accordance with sacred laws. The priestly class received grants from the rulers for their living. Common people also offered them gifts and donations. The people in towns formed the third section of society. They included shopkeepers, merchants, traders, etc. Most of the farmers and peasants formed the fourth and lowest section of society. They mostly paid land revenue and other taxes but led a miserable life. Economic life. Just like the ancient period, agriculture was the main occupation of the masses in medieval India. Firoz Shah Tughlaq took some steps to promote agriculture. He built 5 canals and dug a large number of wells. बहुत सारे कुएं बनवाए थे उसने. His irrigation works proved a boon for the farmers. The state also gave loans to the farmers in times of drought and famine. India had trade relations with Central and Western Asia. It was mostly in the hands of Multani Hindu traders. India also had trade relations with the Srivijaya Empire, China, East Africa and Arabia. So the Srivijaya Empire flourished between the 7th and 13th centuries. This maritime and commercial kingdom in the Malay archipelago, a group of islands. So originated on the island of Sumatra and soon came to control the Strait of Malacca. It controlled international sea trade and had relations with other islands and with China and India. So it was also center for a Mahayana Buddhism and a stopping place for Chinese pilgrims visiting to India. So in northern India, Delhi was a great center of trade. It was a market for the sale and purchase of goods like sugar, wheat, fine silk, cotton, textile, metal wares, handicrafts, ivory, etc. So the necessities of life seemed to be cheaper during the reign of Alauddin Khilji. Due to his economic reforms and market regulation, Firoz Shah Tughlaq abolished many improper taxes. This resulted in the growth of trade. Sikandar Lodi also introduced economic reforms that encouraged trade and industry. So, despite all this, the people had to bear the cost of the huge army capped by the sultans. Besides this, foreign invasions and internal revolts also hampered the growth of trade and agriculture at times. Art and architecture. Though the sultans of Delhi were not as magnificent builders as Mughal rulers, so they took a fair amount of interest in architecture. They found new cities, built places, rest house, bridges, mosques and tomb. So Alauddin Khilji built the city of Siri and Ghiyazuddin Tughlaq built the city of Tughlaqabad. Firoz Shah Tughlaq built the city of Hisar. So Firoza and Jaunpur, the famous Adina Masjid at Padua built by Sikandar Shah, was one of the largest mosques in the Muslim world. So the Jama Masjid at Ahmedabad and Mahmud Begara Mosque at Champaner are beautiful and low-fee structure. The Kuwaitul Ismaila Mosque built by Qutbuddin Aibak is a fine example of the Indo-Muslim style of architecture. The Adai Din Ka Jhopda Mosque at Ajmer was built by Qutbuddin Aibak but was expanded by Iltutmish. Qutbuddin Aibak also started the construction of the Qutub Minar in Delhi, but it was finally finished by Iltutmish. This magnificent minar was originally 225 feet high and had 4 stories. Firoz Shah Tughlaq was the most magnificent builder of all the Tughlaq rulers. So the greatest monuments of his reign are Firoz Shah Kotla, Kali Masjid, Lal Gumbaz and his own mausoleum. The most important monument of the Lodi dynasty is the Mot Ki Masjid built by Sikandar Lodi. Language and literature. The Delhi Sultan encouraged the study of Persian, the language spoken mostly by the Rus, nobility and the ulema. Sanskrit was the classical language of the Hindus but was spoken only by highly learned Hindus. The Bhakti movement led to the growth of various regional languages such as Marathi, Gujarati, Hindi, Punjabi, Bengali, Kannada, Tamil and Telugu. Many Sanskrit books were translated into other Indian languages. Persian, being the court language, was important for both the Muslims and the Hindus. Both the communities contributed to the growth of Persian language. Amir Khusro, nicknamed the Parrot of India, belonged to this period. So he was a famous author and poet who wrote in Persian, Hindi and Urdu. So besides famous historians like Minhajul Siraj and Ziauddin Barni and traveler Ibn Battuta used Persian to write their accounts about rulers, political events and the lives of the common people. Urdu, a new hybrid language, also originated during this era. It was a simple language understandable by both the Tughs and the Indians. So the origin of Punjab literature is also traced from this period. Baba Sheikh Farid sang both in Punjabi and Persian. So he was the first Sufi poet who used standard literary Punjabi. The Vijayanagar rulers patronized Sanskrit. The famous Sanskrit scholars of this period were Ramanuj, Sarthi Mishra and Jayadeva. So the Delhi Sultanate rulers got many Sanskrit works translated into Persian and Arabic. Delhi Sultanate and their administration. The rulers of the Delhi Sultanate were autocrat and enjoyed enormous power. The Sultan's word was law. He could appoint any person to any post and dismiss him according to his will. So he governed with the help of some advisors and ministers. So the Sultan was expected to follow the rules based on the Quran and Islamic traditions. The Qazi and the ulema had a great impact on the administration, but Sultan like Balban, Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq did not give much importance to them. The power of the Delhi Sultan depended on their army. Okay, so the maintained power by the sword, but booty was one of the main sources of income for this Sultan. The most important among Sultan's ministers were the Wazir or the revenue minister and the Mir Bakshi or the paymaster of the army. So the minister in charge of the military organization was called Diwan-e Arish, the Diwan-e Risalat, was a minister of religious affairs. The empire was divided into provinces. The subas यानी इनको सूबा बोलते हैं, were divided into six into parganas. So the parganas consisted of some village. The government of the provinces was called the wali, mukti or subedar. The main duty of the government was to maintain law and order in the province. The village was the primary unit of local administration. A group of village was called a pargana. So the chief officer of the pargana was called the amil, who was responsible for the collection of land revenue. The village headman was called mukaddam or chaudhary. The kotwal was the head of the police department of the town. So criminals were given severe punishments during the rule of the Delhi sultans. Ikta system. The term ikta, the land or land revenue assigned to an individual on behalf of the ruler. So the beginning, the Turkish administration was essentially military. The sultans divided the empire into a number of tracts called ikta, which were assigned to the military leader. The holder of an ikta was called iktidar. But he did not own the land. He maintained law and order in the ikta and collected the land revenue due to this state. Out of the land revenue, thus collected the iktidar meant the cost of administration. He was allowed a part of the income for his own use. He sent the balance, if any, to the state treasury. There was three important taxes. First on cultivation called khars, half of the produce. Second on cattle and third on houses. The nobility and the courts. The sultans and nobles enjoy a high standard of living. Most of them came from the Turkish and Afghan families that settled in India. The nobles were very powerful during the Sultanate period. Sometimes they even influenced the state policies. The Sultan occupied the most important place. He was the center of all political, judicial and military power. Like most Hindu rulers, every Sultan in the Sultanate period built his own palace. Sultan Balban had a dazzling court and protocols which were designed to impress visitors. So the Khalji Sultan followed the same tradition. Muhammad bin Tughlaq in fact took his convention of new heights. Ibn Battuta described how a person who wanted to visit the Sultan had to pass through their lofty, heavily guarded gates. So he then entered the court of, wanted to visit the Sultan, court of 1,000 pillars, which was a vast hall and decorated with costly things. So this was the place where the Sultan held his public court. So the Sultan's birthday and the Nowruz, the Persian New Year, were both celebrated with great pomp and show. So the court was a hotbed of political conspiracies, backstabbing and diplomacy. The nobles tried to copy the elegant living of the sultans. They lived in magnificent places, wore costly clothes and were surrounded by a large number of servants, slaves and retainers. The sultan continued to grant land or village to an officer in lieu of paying him salary. The grant was not hereditary and could be transferred. But when the central authority became weak, the grant usually came during Tughlaq's period. A number of nobles were able to amass wealth. The sultans and the nobles built gardens, orchards, markets, etc. Thus, during the Sultanate period, a new class of landed gentry came up. The breakup of the Delhi Sultanate towards the beginning of the 15th century brought this trend to a halt. Okay, so the all topics are covered in this chapter. I hope you will very well understand this. Thank you. Have a nice day.